The elderly black woman sat alone at the lawyer's desk, hands trembling. Her entire inheritance was a single dusty briefcase. No house, no money, no explanation. She opened it slowly, expecting disappointment. Inside was a stack of letters and a small metal key taped to the lid. Her breath caught. The first letter began with, "I'm sorry I left you alone. This is the truth you were never told." Her world shattered and rebuilt in the same moment. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from so we can bring more stories like these. Most mornings on Maple Street started the same way. The city woke up loud, buses hissing, cars honking, somebody's music playing too early, somebody else yelling at a dog that didn't care. But tucked back on the end of the block, in a little leaning house with chipped white paint and a porch swing that squeaked on every third rock, things moved slower. That's where Mrs. Lillian Carter lived. 72, black, widowed. Small frame, soft hands, and a back that complained every time she bent down but still bent anyway. Her hair was all silver now, wrapped in a simple scarf each morning, and her voice carried that tired sweetness that comes from spending years praying more than she talked. She woke up before the sun, not because she had to, just because her body never unlearned it. Years of early buses, cleaning jobs, cafeteria shifts. Her bones still thought a time clock was waiting, even though she'd been retired a while now. The alarm on the cheap bedside clock blinked 5:31 a.m. She was already awake. She lay there for a moment, staring at the little crack in the ceiling she'd been promising herself she'd get fixed one of these days. The house creaked a bit, settling. The street outside was still mostly dark. She turned her head toward the framed photo on her nightstand. A younger Lillian, a tall, dark-skinned man beside her in a suit too big at the shoulders, her hand on his chest, his hand on hers. "Morning, Harold," she whispered, voice rough with sleep. The picture smiled back in frozen time. He'd been gone for 11 years. Cancer. Fast. 1 month, they were arguing over grocery prices. The next, she was sitting in a hospital room, holding a hand that was already cold. She still said good morning to him every day. Didn't cost her nothing. Helped her more than she'd admit. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, slippers waiting for her feet like loyal dogs. Her joints popped a little. She sucked her teeth. Body's sounding like popcorn again, she muttered, easing herself up. Her little house was quiet. No TV, no voices, no kids. Just the hum of the old fridge and the ticking clock in the living room. She shuffled to the kitchen, clicking on the light. Yellow glow flooded the small space. Old cabinets, worn countertop, tiny stove. Clean, but lived in. A calendar on the wall with all the months from the charity at church, still stuck on September, even though it wasn't September anymore. She filled the kettle, set it on the burner, and grabbed her favorite mug, the chipped one, with blessed and highly favored faded almost all the way off. While the water heated, she opened the back door and stepped onto her small porch. The air was chilly, sharp enough to wake her up all the way. Her backyard wasn't anything fancy, just a little square of earth, a patch of grass trying its best, and a narrow strip of soil where she'd planted things over the years. These days it was mostly collard greens, a few tomatoes, and one stubborn rosebush that refused to die. "Morning, babies," she said to the plants, like she always did. She walked slowly toward the garden, her slippers getting damp from the dew. She touched the leaves, checked the soil with the back of her fingers, pulled up a tiny weed trying to sneak in. This was her quiet joy, something she could grow, something that still needed her. She straightened up with a soft groan. "Lord, next time I bend like that, send an angel to pick me back up," she muttered. The kettle whistled faintly from inside. She shuffled back in, poured the hot water over a tea bag, and stirred in a spoonful of honey she'd been stretching way longer than it was meant to L. At the little kitchen table, she sat down and bowed her head. Her prayers weren't long and fancy. "Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for a roof that's still standing. Thank you for legs that still move, even when they talk back. Watch over whoever needs you this morning. And if you got a mind to, don't let these bills stress me out today. Amen." She sipped her tea. The warmth curled down her chest, settling something deep. On the wall, above the calendar, hung another frame. Not a picture this time, just a small script. "God sets the lonely in families." Every time she looked at it, something twisted in her gut. Because far as she knew, she didn't have a family. Her parents had passed years back. Her husband, gone. She and Harold never had kids. The one pregnancy she'd had ended in a delivery room with a doctor who wouldn't look her in the eye when he said, "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Carter." The baby didn't make it. She'd held on to that ache for decades. Rocked it like it was something real in her arms on nights when she couldn't sleep. Sometimes she still woke up, reaching out for a crying that wasn't there. The loneliness, it wasn't loud. It was just always there, in the empty chair across from her, in the way nobody called her phone, unless it was a scam or the pharmacy, in the small stack of church bulletins with her name written in the corner when they dropped off food at Christmas. She wasn't bitter, not really, just resigned. "Some folks get full tables," she'd tell herself. "Some of us get the Lord and a cup of tea." Still something. Around 8, she got dressed. Simple dress, faded cardigan, black church shoes, a neat scarf, always presentable. She didn't believe in stepping out the house looking any kind of way, even if no one was paying attention. She checked the little envelope with her pension money, tucked safely in her purse. It wasn't much, but she'd learned how to stretch not much. All the way across. Old habits. Her cane waited by the door, not because she absolutely needed it, but because it made walking feel safer, like she had backup. She locked the front door and started down the block. The church was 5 streets over. Not a big cathedral, just a modest brick building with a flashing sign that sometimes froze halfway through the word welcome. But it was home. People knew her name there. They hugged her. They asked after her health. They said, "We missed you last Sunday, Sister Carter," when she stayed in with a bad back. On the way there, she passed the usual. The corner store owner sweeping the sidewalk. A mother dragging 2 sleepy kids toward the bus stop. A man yelling into his phone about something that probably didn't matter as much as he thought. Life going on. She smiled at whoever met her eyes. Not everybody did, but she still smiled anyway. At church, the early morning prayer group was small, maybe 6 people scattered in the pews. She slid into her usual spot toward the middle, set her purse down, and closed her eyes as the pastor's wife led a soft hymn. Lean in, safe and secure from all alarms. Her voice joined theirs, thin but steady. For a little while, the loneliness quieted. Here, she was part of something. Here, someone would notice if she didn't show up. Service ended, and folks shuffled out. A few stopped to hug her. "You need anything, Sister Carter? You got rides for your appointments? We're having a potluck Saturday. Don't you try and slip out on us." She smiled, assured them she was fine, and walked back home with the help of her cane. Back at her house, The mailbox on the front fence hung crooked. Most days, it was empty. Some days, it held bills. Once in a while, a church flyer. She opened it without thinking. One envelope. Thick, white, official-looking. Her name printed on the front in neat black letters. Mrs. Lillian M. Carter. In full. No nickname, no mistake. She frowned. "Probably something else they want me to pay," she muttered. She took it inside, set her purse down, and sat at the table. The envelope felt heavy in her hands, like more than just paper. On the top left corner, a name. Henderson, Pierce, and Lowe, attorneys at law. Her forehead wrinkled. "Attorneys?" she said out loud. "To nobody. What business I got with lawyers?" Her heart did a small, nervous skip. She slid a finger under the seal and opened it carefully, older hands taking their time. Inside was a single sheet, crisp and clean. She unfolded it, squinting a little at the printed words. "Dear Mrs. Carter, we respectfully request your presence at our office regarding a matter of inheritance and final instructions connected to the estate of a deceased client. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to schedule an appointment. This is not a sales or promotional communication. You are a named party in this matter. Sincerely, Alan J. Pierce, Senior Attorney, Henderson, Pierce and Lowe." She read it twice. Inheritance? Her? She let out a quiet, disbelieving laugh. "Must be a mistake," she said, folding the letter and unfolding it again, as if the words might change. She didn't know any rich people, didn't have any cousins with money, didn't even have cousins she talked to anymore. And yet, her name was right there, clear as day. Mrs. Lillian M. Carter. She turned the envelope over, checking for some "oops, wrong person" note that wasn't there. Her mind spun. Maybe somebody at church put her name down as an emergency contact? Maybe it was some scam dressed up fancier tea. The paper felt real. The ink, the tone, and that one line stuck with her. "You are a named party in this matter." She sat back, letter in hand, staring at the tiny kitchen window. The garden swayed softly outside. The rosebush moved in the wind. Life same as always. But now there was this. A law firm. An inheritance. Somebody, somewhere, had put her name on something she didn't understand. Her first instinct was to toss it aside and say, "Not my business, wrong woman." But another thought whispered up, gentle but persistent. What if it isn't a mistake? She closed her eyes, sighed. "All right, Nord," she murmured. "If this is trouble, send me back home quick. If it's something else, give me the strength to walk through it." Later that week, after a sleepless night and a shaky bus ride she could barely afford, she stood in front of a tall glass building downtown, clutching the letter in slightly trembling hands. People in suits rushed past her, coffee in hand, phones pressed to ears. Doors whooshed open, elevators dinged. Everything moved fast, like the world was in a hurry, and she was standing still. She looked up at the shiny sign over the entrance. Henderson, Pierce, and Lowe, attorneys at law. Then she looked down at her own shoes. Scuffed black flats, hems a little worn, hands a little wrinkled. "Lord," she whispered, half a prayer, half a joke. "I look like I'm here to clean this place, not sit in it." Still, she squared her shoulders as best she could, tucked the letter safely back into her purse, and stepped through the doors, completely unaware that on the other side of that elevator ride, her entire understanding of her life was about to be broken open. The lobby looked like it cost more than her whole house. Tall ceilings, marble floors so shiny she could almost see the doubt on her own face. Big plants in pots that probably had their own savings accounts. People moved through the space like they belonged there, heels clicking, ties straightened, briefcases swinging. No one was walking slow. No one looked lost, except her. Lillian clutched her purse strap tighter and stepped up to the front desk. The receptionist didn't look up at first. Young, pale nails, perfectly shaped, hair slicked back tight. Her fingers clicked across a keyboard like machine gun fire. Lillian cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me, baby." "Yes, 1 second," the receptionist said, still not looking up. A moment passed, then another. Lillian shifted her weight, cane pressed lightly into the marble. She could feel eyes on her from somewhere. People in the lobby. Quick glances at the old black woman standing there in her church shoes and fading cardigan. Finally, the receptionist looked up. Her eyes did a quick scan. Headscarf, cardigan, the lines in Lillian's face, the old purse she'd had since before the internet. Her smile was polite and empty. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice sweet but distant. Lillian swallowed. "Yes, ma'am. I got this letter here. Says to come down to this office. From a Mr. Pierce," she said, carefully pulling the paper from her purse. She laid it gently on the counter. The receptionist glanced at it, then back at Lillian. Her eyebrows lifted, just a hair. "Oh," she said. "This is a law firm, ma'am." Lillian blinked slowly. "I know," she answered, a tiny bit of dry humor slipping through. "I read the sign." The receptionist chuckled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Right, I just meant this is for legal clients. Are you sure you're in the right building?" Behind Lillian, a couple sitting on the lobby couch leaned in a little closer. A woman in a blazer whispered, "Maybe she's lost." Her companion snickered under his breath. "Maybe she's here to clean," he murmured, not quiet enough. Lillian's ears caught the words, but she kept her eyes on the receptionist. "My name's on that letter," she said calmly. "Mrs. Lillian Carter. They asked me to come. Said I was named in something." The receptionist gave another, tight little smile. "Of course," she said. "Let me just check." She picked up the phone, dialing with one hand, eyes still flicking over Lillian like she was some misplaced package. "Hi, this is front desk," the receptionist said into the receiver. "I have, a Mrs. Carter here? She says she has an appointment?" Pause. Her tone shifted slightly. Oh, really? Okay, yes, I'll send her up." She hung up and looked at Lillian with a new, slightly strained smile. "All right, Mrs. Carter," she said. "You can have a seat in the waiting area. Someone will be down to get you." The way she said, "You can have a seat," sounded like she was making an exception. Lillian nodded, taking her letter back, folding it carefully. "Thank you, baby," she replied. She turned and walked toward the row of chairs near the wall. On the way, her cane made soft taps on the marble floor. Tap, tap, a slow, steady reminder that she didn't move like the rest of them anymore. She eased herself into a chair by the corner. On the table beside her, magazines with shiny people on the covers. Headlines about mergers and acquisitions and top 40 under 40. She flipped one open, not really reading. The words swam a little. Across the room, the couple from earlier kept glancing her way. The woman leaned in. "You think she's one of those clients suing someone for slip and fall?" she whispered. The man shrugged. "All that trouble for a briefcase or something, probably," he said. "My uncle had some old lady come in once thinking she was rich 'cause she got left a box of war medals. No actual money." They smirked. Lillian heard it. She didn't respond. She'd learned a long time ago that not every comment needed an answer. Not every sting needed to turn into a fight. Some things you just handed up to God and kept breathing. Still, the words cut a little, made her feel small in a room that already felt too big. Another door opened. A young man in a suit stepped out. Maybe late 20s, hair too perfect, smile too smooth. He scanned the room. His eyes landed on her and softened in that way people use when they think they're being kind to a child. "Ma'am," he said, walking over. "Can I help you with something? The waiting area is just for clients. If you're looking for building services, they're on the lower level." She blinked at him. "I'm waiting on a Mr. Pierce," she answered. "Got a letter here, says to meet him." She held it up. The young lawyer glanced at it, then back at her face. "Oh," he said, cheeks coloring a little. "I just didn't. You know what? Let me see." Before he could finish, another voice cut through. Firm, polished, older. "Mrs. Carter?" Lillian turned her head. A tall man in his 60s stood near the hallway. Gray hair neatly combed, navy suit pressed sharp. He held a file folder in one hand and his glasses in the other. He smiled. Not the fake kind, the real, tired kind. "Mrs. Lillian Carter," he called again. She slowly pushed herself up with her cane. "Yes, sir, that's me." He walked toward her, hand extended. "Alan Pierce," he said. "Senior attorney. We've been expecting you." The room shifted. This time, different. Curious, surprised, a little embarrassed. She didn't look their way. Didn't need to. She had bigger questions now. The hallway to his office was lined with framed degrees and certificates. Fancy schools. Long names. Years she remembered for different reasons. Protests, layoffs, funerals. Now preserved in gold frames and professional fonts. Mr. Pierce opened the door to a warm, wood-paneled office with two big windows overlooking the city. Bookshelves covered one wall. A plant sat by the window, thriving in the light. A photograph of Mr. Pierce with two teenage kids sat on his desk, beside a stack of neatly arranged files. "Please, have a seat, Mrs. Carter," he said, gesturing to a comfortable chair. She lowered herself into it, purse in her lap, cane leaning against her leg. Mr. Pierce sat across from her, folding his hands on the desk. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just looked at her, not like she was a case number, but like someone he'd heard about before. It made her uneasy. "Sir," she started, smoothing the edge of her skirt. I think maybe you got the wrong woman." He smiled faintly. "Trust me," he said. "We don't." He reached for a manila folder, opened it and slid a document slightly forward. Her name was printed there again, big and bold. "Mrs. Carter, do you know a man by the name of Thomas Hale?" She frowned, shaking her head slowly. "No, sir. Name doesn't ring any bells. Only Hale I know is the one in the Bible," she said. He nodded, as if that was the answer he expected. "All right," he said softly. "Let me explain what we know." He leaned back a little, choosing his words carefully. "Several weeks ago, a man by the name of Thomas L. Hale passed away," he began. "He was a quiet client. No spouse. No children on record. He had a modest estate. Nothing flashy, but very intentionally arranged." She listened, hands folded in her lap. "His will was very specific," Pierce continued. "Most things were straightforward. A few bequests, some charitable donations. But there was one unusual instruction." He tapped the folder lightly. "He left one item with strict instructions to be delivered to a woman named Mrs. Lillian M. Carter, living at your address." Her heart thudded. "Me?" she whispered. "Yes, ma'am," he said. He was very clear. No other names. No alternate addresses. She shook her head slowly. "I don't understand," she said. "I don't know nobody by that name. I ain't never met no man leaving things to me." Pierce nodded, lips pressed together thoughtfully. "We attempted to clarify with him before his passing," he said, "but he was very firm. All he said was that you were very important to him. Very important. The words landed somewhere strange inside her. Soft and sharp at the same time. She swallowed. What exactly did he leave? She asked. Mr. Pierce's gaze shifted to the corner of the room. There, on a side table, sat a single object she hadn't noticed when she walked in. A dark leather briefcase. Old, but well cared for. Corners slightly worn. Brass clasps dulled with age. Pierce stood, walked over, and picked it up with both hands, setting it gently on the desk between them. This, he said, is all he insisted you receive. Lillian stared at it. A briefcase? She asked, confused. That's it? That's it, Pierce replied. He left no other instructions regarding you, no explanation in his formal will, just a private note lodged with our office that you were to be contacted and given this. He slid it a little closer to her. Ma'am, he said, voice softening, I know this must feel strange, and I know coming down here wasn't easy, but I truly believe whatever is in this case is meant for you, and that you deserve to know why. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached forward, resting them on the worn Lee. The room felt smaller now. She could hear the faint murmur of the office outside the door, phones ringing, printers humming, people moving around. But it all sounded far away. What if this is all some kind of joke? She whispered, barely more to herself than to him. Or a mistake? Pierce shook his head slowly. I've been doing this work for 38 years, Mrs. Carter, he said. I've seen greed, confusion, family fights, and worse. This doesn't feel like a joke. And I don't think it's a mistake. He nodded at the briefcase. Would you like to open it here? I can give you privacy or sit with you, whatever you prefer. Her throat felt tight. She glanced at the case, then at him. Her voice came out small. Could you stay? She asked. My hands ain't as steady as they used to be. And I don't think I want to be alone if this is bad news. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Of course, he said. He reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a small key, and held it up. This came with the case, he explained. We didn't open it. I believed it should be you. He placed the key in her hand. It was cool, heavy, real. She slid it slowly into the little lock on the briefcase. For a second, her fingers just stopped. She closed her eyes. Lord, she whispered silently, if there's trouble in here, hold me. If there's pain, help me breathe through it. And if there's something I never expected, give me the strength to see it. The key turned with a soft click. She lifted the clasps. The briefcase opened, and inside, neatly arranged, yellowed with time, lay a stack of old handwritten letters tied with a ribbon, a folded map, a small metal key taped to an index card, and a photograph of a young boy she had never seen in her life, but whose eyes somehow felt like they were looking straight through time, directly at her. For a long second, Lillian just stared at the things inside that briefcase like they might vanish if she blinked too hard. The letters were on paper she hadn't seen in years. That real kind, not the cheap printer stuff. Edges softened, corners curled a bit, ink faded, but still readable. Someone had taken time with every stroke of that pen. She reached out and touched the top envelope with the tips of her fingers. The paper was smooth and worn, like it had been handled a lot before it ever got to her. Her name was written on the front in careful handwriting. To Mrs. Lillian M. Carter. Her breath hitched. Lord have mercy, she whispered. Mr. Pierce sat quietly across from her, hands folded, watching her with that kind of focus that said he knew this moment mattered more than any contract he'd handled all month. "You all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, even though she wasn't totally sure she was. Her eyes flicked to the other items. ... The folded map, edges frayed, creases deep, like it had been opened and closed 100 times. The small metal key, taped neatly to an index card with no words on it. And that photograph. She picked up the photo with both hands, gentler than she picked up plates from her own sink. A boy, maybe 8, maybe 10, somewhere in that age where kids look like they could go either way. Little man or still somebody's baby. Brown skin, big eyes, ears that stuck out just a little. A serious look on his face, like he didn't smile easy for cameras. Behind him, a plain house, a yard with patchy grass, something wooden in the background, maybe a porch or steps. She swallowed. "Do you recognize him?" Pierce asked. She shook her head, but her voice came out before she could stop it. Look. She stopped, frowned. He looked kind of familiar, but I don't know why. She set the photo back carefully, like it was fragile glass. Her hands moved to the stack of letters again. "Oh, Mr. Pierce," she said quietly. "Yes, ma'am. You sure I'm supposed to see all this?" Her voice sounded small in the polished room. He nodded. "More sure than I am about most things that cross my desk," he answered. "He wanted you to have this. Whatever's inside, it was meant for you." She sighed, a long, shaky sound. "All right then," she whispered. She picked up the first letter, the one on top. The ribbon had been tied around the stack loosely enough that it slid off without much trouble. Her fingers trembled as she broke the light crease at the top of the envelope. She unfolded the yellowed paper. Her eyes scanned the first line, then the second. Her heart started beating so loud she could hear it in her ears. "What does it say?" Pierce asked gently. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. She tried again. "My name is," she read slowly, voice thin. "My name is Thomas Hale." The penmanship was neat, steady, practiced. Whoever wrote it hadn't rushed. She swallowed hard. Her eyes kept going. The next line made the room tilt. "And I am your son." Her vision blurred. She blinked, stared at the paper, then at Pierce, then at the paper again, like the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. "What?" she whispered. Pierce leaned in. "What did it say?" he asked, carefully. Her voice dropped even lower, like she was afraid saying it out loud would make it untrue. He said, "I am your son," she repeated. The words cracked open something inside her. "My son is dead," she added, almost out of instinct. "He died at birth. I lost him." Her chest tightened. She could smell hospital soap again, hear the beeping, see that doctor's tired eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Carter. The baby didn't make it." She'd carried that grief for over 50 years. Pierce's face went very still. "May I?" he asked, nodding toward the letter. Her hand shook as she passed it to him. He took it carefully, adjusting his glasses, then read in silence for a few seconds, his jaw tightening just barely. The room felt too quiet. Even with the door closed, Lillian could hear faint sounds outside. A phone ringing, footsteps, a printer spitting out paper. Life going on, while her life wasn't. Pierce cleared his throat softly, looking up at her. "Mrs. Carter," he said slowly, "I think this explains some things. Her fingers dug into the arms of the chair. "Read it," she whispered. "Please, I can't get past that first line right now." His voice took on a gentle rhythm as he read, not performing, just respecting the words. "My name is Thomas Hale, and I am your son. If you're reading this, it means I finally found you, or at least found a way to put myself in front of you, even if I never got to stand there in person." Lillian sucked in a sharp breath. She remembered the nurse turning away. She remembered the way nobody would let her hold him. "I am your son." Her hands went to her chest without thinking, like she was trying to hold her heart in place. Outside in the hallway, someone walked past the door, and the faint outline of their shadow slid across the frosted glass. Life still moved, but in here, time had stopped. Pierce continued, voice steady. "I grew up being told you didn't want me, that you were young and poor and walked away." Lillian's head jerked up. "No," she whispered. "No, that ain't true. That ain't—" Pierce paused, looking at her. She shook her head, eyes hot. "I never walked away from my baby," she said, voice shaking. "They said he died. They told me he died." Her words hung between them, raw and jagged. Pierce looked back at the page. "When I was a boy," he read, "I'd make up stories about you, that you were sick, that you were somewhere far away, that you'd come back when I turned 10, or 15, or 18. Every birthday I thought, maybe this is the year my mother finds me." "I knew something was wrong," she whispered. I knew. They wouldn't let me see him, wouldn't let me hold him. Just kept saying, 'I'm sorry,' and rushing off." Her voice cracked on the last word. She looked up at Pierce, eyes shining. "They told me I was young, poor, and it was all for the best. We move on," she choked. "I cried for that child for years. I still do. I talk to a grave that don't exist. Silence wrapped around them. On the other side of the glass wall that faced the lobby, people had started to notice. A few faces glanced in. The young lawyer from earlier, the couple in the waiting room, the receptionist craning her neck just a bit. They couldn't hear the words, but they could see. An old woman with her hand over her mouth. An attorney reading from a letter, like it was a verdict. A briefcase open between them, like evidence. Pierce kept reading. "I wish I could sit in front of you and say all this myself," the letter continued. "But I wasted a lot of time being angry at the woman I thought you were. By the time I learned what really happened, I didn't know how to face you, didn't know if I had the right to knock on your door and say, 'You have a son.' So I hired help to find you. A man I trusted. He might even be in the room when you read this." Pierce paused. He glanced at the door, then back at her. "His name is David Hale," he read. "He's not my blood. Just a man who shared my last name and helped me carry the weight of it. If he's there, he can explain more than I can fit in these pages." Lillian swallowed hard. "Someone coming here?" she asked, voice small. "As far as I know," Pierce said, "yes. He confirmed he'd be on his way today." Her heart felt like it was learning a new way to beat. Irregular, heavy, stunned. Keep going," she whispered. Pierce looked back at the letter. "I don't know what you've been told your whole life about that day," he read, "but I need you to hear this from me. You did not give me away. You did not throw me aside. You did not choose a life without me. What was done to us was done to us. To a scared young mother, to a baby that deserved his mama." Lillian broke. The sob tore out of her before she could stop it. Low, deep, from somewhere old inside her chest. Her hand clutched at her dress, over her heart, as if it hurt physically. Tears spilled down her cheeks in hot streaks. Pierce set the letter down for a moment, his eyes kind, giving her space. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, shoulders shaking. "He was alive," she whispered through tears. "My baby was alive. All this time, they lied to me. They lied to us." The weight of decades crashed over her in one wave. Regrets. What ifs. Nights she'd prayed for a child who, it turned out, had been out there praying for her too. Outside the office, the lobby had grown noticeably quieter. The receptionist frowned, looking toward the glass. The couple had stopped whispering, watching with uncertain eyes. Even the young lawyer shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware that whatever joke he'd made earlier had aged badly in about 5 seconds. In here, all that noise didn't matter. It was just Lillian and the ghost of a son who'd found his way back to her on paper. Pierce spoke gently. "Would you like to stop for today?" he asked. "We can continue another time. There are many letters. You don't have to do this all at once." She shook her head, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "No," she croaked. "He took the time to write them. Least I can do is sit still long enough to hear him." He nodded, respect deepening in his gaze. He picked up the letter again. "If you're angry when you read this, I understand," Thomas had written. "If you hate me for waiting this long, I understand that too. But if there's even a small place in your heart that can hold me, even just enough to say my name once out loud, that would be more than I ever let myself hope for. My name," the letter said, "is Thomas Leonard Hale. I am your son, and I never stopped wanting you, even when I thought you never wanted me." Lillian whispered it, like tasting a new word on her tongue. "Thomas," she said. "Thomas." Her shoulders shook again. She had a name now, not the baby that died. Not the child I lost. Thomas, a man who'd spent his life asking questions she never knew needed answering. Before she could gather herself enough to say anything else, there was a soft knock at the office door. Both she and Pierce turned their heads. The receptionist's voice floated through the wood, a little more respectful than before. "Mr. Pierce, there's Mr. David Hale here to see you. He says he's here about the Carter matter." Pierce met Lillian's eyes. "Are you ready to let someone else into this?" he asked gently. She sniffed, nodding faintly. "If he knew my boy," she whispered. "I need to hear what he's got to say." Pierce stood and walked to the door. When it opened, a man stepped in, maybe late 40s, dark skin, lines at the corners of his eyes that said he'd seen enough life for 2 people. Not fancy, but neat. Button-down shirt, worn jacket, calloused hands. He held his hat in front of him, twisting it slightly. Nerves clear in the little motion. His eyes went straight to Lillian. Softened. He swallowed once. "Mrs. Carter?" he said quietly. "Yes, sir," she answered, voice still raw. He stepped further in, the door closing behind him with a soft click. "My name is David Hale," he said. I was your son's friend. He hired me to find you. And to tell you the truth," that man's letter started. He took a breath, steadying himself. "Your son was taken from you," David said. "He grew up thinking you left him. When he found out that was a lie, it broke him. But it also gave him a mission." He held her gaze. "He spent the rest of his life trying to get back to you," David said, "even if the only way he could do it was through that briefcase you're holding." And with those words, in that quiet office, high above a city that had no idea what was happening in that room, Lillian's world, which had felt so small for so long, split wide open. For a moment, nobody said anything. The small office felt too full of air, of memories that weren't hers yet, of words hanging in the space between mother and son that had never been spoken out loud. Lillian stared at the man in front of her. David Hale. Not her blood, but carrying her son's last name like a bridge. He shifted his weight, hat still turning slowly in his hands, eyes gentle and careful, the way you'd look at someone standing on a cliff edge, not wanting to shove them, not wanting to leave them there alone either. You knew my boy?" Lillian finally asked, voice thin. David nodded once. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I knew him, worked with him, sat with him, fought with him, watched him try to untangle a life that never made sense till he found your name." Her throat tightened. She pointed weakly at the briefcase. "That's all him?" she asked. "All that, letters, maps, whatever else, that's from my son?" "Yes, ma'am," David said. "He put it together over years. Every time he learned something new, he added to it. Called it his road back home, even when he didn't know for sure if you were still here to meet him at the end of it." Her heart clenched around that. Road back home. She blinked, slowly. "Sit down, Mr. Hale," Pierce said quietly, motioning to another chair. "This is sensitive ground. Take your time." David nodded, pulling the chair closer, but still leaving space between him and Lillian. Like he understood she might need breathing room. He sat on the edge of it, hat still in his hands. "Mrs. Carter," he began, "before I say anything else, I need you to know something straight off." He leaned in a little. "Your son never stopped wanting you," he said. "Not once. Not even in the years he was mad at you, 'cause he thought you'd thrown him away. Under all that anger, he wanted you, bad." Her eyes filled again, but she didn't look away. "Then why he never come knock on my door?" she whispered. "If he wanted me so bad, why I gotta meet him through paper and not his face?" Pain edged her words, not accusation, just hurt that had run out of places to hide. David let out a slow breath. "That's a long road," he said, "but I'll walk it with you. From the beginning, far as I know it." He settled back slightly, eyes flicking down for a second, like he was rewinding a tape in his mind. "I met Thomas about 10 years ago," he said. "We worked the same construction job for a while. Him in management, me on site. Thought he was one of them quiet, keep everything bottled up kind of bosses." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Turns out he was just tired of people telling him who he was," David said. "One day at lunch, he sees my name on a coffee cup. Hale, same as his. Man sits down and goes, 'You from the cursed branch or the stubborn one?' Lillian let out a shaky, unexpected chuckle. It surprised both of them. "That sounds like something my husband would say," she murmured. David's eyes softened. "After that, we got to talking more," he went on. "Took a while, but one night after a long shift, he told me this story. Said he'd grown up in and out of foster homes, bounced around like a ball nobody wanted to keep." He paused, watching her reaction. Her hands tightened in her lap. "He said the first story they told him was that his mom was too young to keep him," David continued. "Then later, someone told him she was irresponsible and chose her own life. By the time he was 18, he had this picture built in his head of you as some woman who just dropped him off and walked away." Lillian's eyes closed for a second, face crumpling. "I never walked away," she whispered. "I know," David said softly. "He knows too, now." Pierce stayed quiet, gaze lowering respectfully, hands folded on the desk. "For a long time, he tried to bury all that," David said. "Went to work, made money, tried to be the opposite of what he'd been told his parents were, responsible, stable, in control. But," he shrugged, "the past don't stay buried just 'cause you throw dirt on it." Lillian nodded faintly. She knew that better than most. "1 year," David said. "He has this health scare. Nothing too big. Minor, but it shakes him, makes him start wondering who he is, where he comes from. He goes digging." He tapped the briefcase lightly. "That's when all this started," he said. Lillian looked at it like it was a heart beating on the table. He pulled hospital records, adoption papers, government files, David said. Things they don't expect you to go back and look at. Took lawyers, favors, and a whole lot of patience. When doors started closing, he hired me to find the cracks. David exhaled through his nose, eyes going distant for a moment. What he found, he said quietly, was ugly. Lillian's fingers curled around the armrests. Tell it, she said. He met her eyes again. The hospital you delivered at, he said, had some people working with certain agencies. Systems that liked taking babies from poor black women, unmarried women, women they thought couldn't properly provide, calling it best for the child. He shook his head. Your boy wasn't the only one, he added softly, but he was one of them. Tears slid down Lillian's cheeks. They told me he died, she murmured. They wouldn't let me see him. I screamed that whole night. Doctor kept saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Nurse said I should pray and be thankful I was still alive, like my baby was some mistake I had to repent for. Her voice cracked so hard on the last word that it hung in the air, jagged. David's jaw clenched. When we found the files, he said, we saw your name crossed out on the birth record. Replaced. Paper trails say you relinquished rights on purpose. He looked at her, searching her face. But your signature on that form, he said, it was forged. Something in Lillian went cold and hot at the same time. Forged, she repeated, numb. Yes, ma'am, David said. Documents doctored. A system that decided they knew better than you. They took him. Gave him a new last name for a while. Moved him through homes. He didn't even know Hale was part of him till later. Her world wobbled. She reached for her cane, not to walk, just to hold on to something. Pierce quietly slid a tissue box toward her. She took one, then another, pressing them to her eyes. David kept going, gentle but honest. When Thomas saw that file, he said, he didn't talk for a long time, just sat there. He was mad. Mad at the system, mad at the doctors, mad at the years he lost, and yeah, mad at you too, 'cause he didn't know who to blame, so he blamed everybody. He looked down at his hands, thumb running over the brim of his hat. But under that, he said, was this hope. He wouldn't say the word, but I could see it. Man suddenly knew he had a mother with a name, a person, not just a ghost in his story. He glanced up again. That's when he came to me and said, I need you to help me find her. Lillian's lip trembled. He really said that? She asked. David smiled a little. Verbatim, he answered. I need you to help me find her. I need to know if she's real. She let out a breath that was half sob, half laugh. And you found me, she whispered. Yes, ma'am, he said. Took a while. Records were messed up. Addresses changed. You moved once, remember? Late 80s. She nodded faintly, thinking back. Landlord was drunk and useless, she said. Roof leaked. Pastor helped me move up the block. Yeah, David said. That move threw the trail for a bit, but eventually we pieced it together. I found your address, drove by a couple times. First time I saw you, you were sitting on that porch swing out front, had a blanket and a little devotional book. Her eyes widened. He'd seen her. She'd been seen. He came out here? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. David's expression grew heavier. Ma'am, he said quietly, your son stood on your street more than on. Her hand flew to her chest again. What? He came a few times over the years, David said. When we first found your address, he drove out, parked down the street, sat in the car, watched you come out to get your mail, watched you sweep your steps, watched you walk to church. Tears spilled again, hot and relentless. Why he ain't come knock? She choked. Why he didn't walk up those steps and say, "Mama, it's me." David's eyes shone a little now, too. "Fear," he said simply. That man could sit in a boardroom full of executives and not flinch. But when it came to you, he was terrified. She shook her head helplessly. "Terrified of what?" she whispered. "Of rejection," David answered. "Of finding out you really didn't want him. He told me once, sitting in that car, if she looks me in the face and says she never wanted me, I won't survive it." A broken sound left her. She shook her head again, heart aching. "Oh, baby," she whispered to the air. "Oh, baby, no. I would have held you till you couldn't breathe. I would have—" Her voice cracked, and the rest disappeared into a sob. David swallowed hard. "He'd sit outside your house," he went on, voice rougher now, holding the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. Some days he'd get as far as opening the car door. Once he stepped out, took 3 steps toward your gate. He inhaled shakily. "Then he turned around," David said. "Said he needed more time." Lillian's shoulders shook as she cried. "More time," she whispered. "We ain't have more time." "No, ma'am," he said softly. "We didn't." The room was quiet again except for her quiet, choked breaths. After a beat, David straightened a little. When he realized his health was failing, he said, he knew time wasn't on his side. That's when he started putting that briefcase together. He told me, "If I can't get past my fear, I'm not letting her live her whole life without knowing the truth. She deserves that. She deserves to know she was never the villain in my story." He nodded toward the letters. "That's why there's more than one," David said. "Each one is a piece of him. His childhood, his questions, times he wanted to come see you, times he thought he saw you in every older woman on the street." Lillian reached out and touched the stack again, fingertips trembling. "Why you leave me all this money stuff they talking about?" she asked, voice still small. "The lawyer said inheritance and estate and all that. Why not give it to some charity or one of them kids he helped, if he had any?" David shook his head gently. "He didn't have kids," he said. "Never married. Had folks he cared about, sure, but no wife, no children. No one who had a right to his heart the way you did." He looked at her like he was trying to make sure she believed him. "He wanted you to have it," David said. "Every account, every property, every investment. Not as hush money, not as sorry it took so long. He told me, I can't give her back the years, but I can give her back some dignity, some comfort, a chance to live the rest of her life, not feeling like the world forgot her." Lillian's face crumpled all over again. "I thought I had nobody," she whispered. "Been sitting in that little house talking to a dead husband and a baby they told me was gone. All this time, I had a son out there fighting his own battles with the same lies." David nodded. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "But he didn't die lying about you. He died telling the truth, setting it straight. That's what this is. That's what he asked me to make sure of." He leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on hers. "He wanted you to know you were wronged, Mrs. Carter. You weren't the girl who gave up her baby. You were the mother who had her child taken." The words landed deep, like medicine and poison at the same time. She stared at the letters again, at the map, at the little metal key, at the photo of that boy with familiar eyes. "My son," she whispered, hand resting over her heart. "My Thomas. He really wanted me?" David's answer came without hesitation. "With everything in him," he said, "till the last breath he took." Her tears kept falling, but there was something different in them now. Still grief, still pain, but also something else. A strange, fragile seed, not just loss, but belonging. For the first time in decades, Lillian Carter no longer felt like a woman with no family in the world. She felt like a mother, A grieving one, a late one, but a mother all the same. And that truth, brutal and beautiful at once, would be the fire that lit everything that came next. The letters didn't look like much. Just paper, ink, someone's handwriting from different years. But sitting there in that office, with a briefcase full of a life she never got to see, they felt heavier than bricks. Lillian wiped her face with the crumpled tissue and picked up the next letter. Her hands were still shaking, but something in her had shifted. A few minutes ago, she'd walked into this building thinking she was a tired old widow with nobody left in the world. Now she knew she'd been a mother all along. She just hadn't been told. "Take your time," Mr. Pierce said, quietly. David nodded too, elbows on his knees, hat still turning slowly in his fingers. Lillian glanced at them both, then back at the stack. She thumbed through the letters. Some were older, ink smudged from years, corners soft. Some were newer, cleaner, sharper edges. All of them had her name on them. "To my mother, to Mrs. Carter, to the woman I've been searching for." She lifted another one, dated about 8 years back. The paper shook as she unfolded it. Her eyes moved over the first lines, and her voice came out in a low, halting murmur as she read parts of it aloud. "I don't know how to start this," it began. "Do I say, 'Dear Mom'? That feels like I'm stealing. Do I say, 'Mrs. Carter'? That feels like I'm writing to a stranger." Her lips trembled around the word mom. "The truth is," the letter went on, "I don't know you. I only know the stories I was told, and those stories weren't kind. They painted you like a careless girl who dropped me off and never looked back." She winced, shoulders curling in. "But now I've seen the files," she read. "I've seen the signatures. I've seen the lies, and I realized something that knocked the breath out of me. Someone stole me from you, and someone stole you from me." Her eyes blurred again. She blinked hard, forcing herself to keep going. "I spent years being mad at a woman who never got the chance to hold me," it said. "I spent my life feeling abandoned by somebody who was probably grieving a child she thought was dead." Her breath hitched at that. That was exactly what she'd done. "I used to sit up nights," she whispered, "asking God if my baby could hear me, if he was safe with him. And all that time, my boy was down here on this earth hurting off lies." Her voice broke. David closed his eyes for a second, jaw clenched. Pierce cleared his throat quietly and slid the tissue box closer again. Lillian took another, pressing it to her face, then continued. "I don't know what kind of life you've had," he wrote. "I don't know if you ever healed. I don't know if you're happy, but I need you to know this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I believed them. I'm sorry I hated you in my head for things you never did. I'm sorry it took me so long to look F." She covered her mouth, a small sound escaping. "Lord," she whispered. "Lord." "I don't know if I'll ever send these," the letter finished. "I've written 3 versions already and ripped them up. Maybe this one makes it. Maybe it stays in a drawer. But if you ever read this one day, just know that somewhere in this world there was a boy, then a man, who carried your name in his chest even when he didn't know it, and he never stopped wanting you." She folded the letter back up slowly, pressing it to her chest for a second, like it was his hand. The next one was shorter. The paper was newer, the date from just a couple years ago. Her eyes skimmed it, then she let Pierce read it out loud, her hands too shaky. "I drove to your street again today," it said. "Parked 3 houses down. Watched you walk out with your little grocery cart, moving slow but steady. I told myself, okay, this is it. Today's the day." I opened the car door, put 1 foot out, and then my chest tightened so bad I thought I was going to pass out. Lillian could almost see it. A man sitting in some old car at the far end of her block, watching her struggle with the sidewalk cracks. "I keep thinking," it went on, "what if you look at me and see a mistake? What if I show up and mess up your peace? What if you've built a life where the lie that I died is the only way you know how to breathe?" Her face crumpled. "Oh, child," she whispered, "you coming to my door would have been the only thing that made sense in my whole life." "So I sat in that car," the letter said, "and I watched you take your time. I watched you talk to the mailman. I watched you smile at that little girl on the corner. And I thought, that woman has a gentle heart. That woman deserved better than what they did to her. And I drove away. Because I'm a coward, but also because I'm terrified of breaking your heart all over again." She shook her head, tears flowing freely now. "You wouldn't have broken it," she whispered. "You would have healed it." Her words hung there, meant for a man who wasn't alive to hear them, but somehow felt close. They went through letter after letter. Some were stories. Stories of his childhood in foster homes, fights, schools, all the times he'd stood in a line and watched other kids get picked first. "I used to stand near the fence," one letter said, "and wonder if somewhere out there you were missing me or if you'd forgotten I ever existed. Now I know you never got the chance to know me in the first place." Another letter was softer. "I had a teacher in 5th grade who kept calling me sweetheart when everyone else called me trouble," he wrote. "Sometimes I pretended she was you. I'd close my eyes and imagine you were the one telling me I wasn't a lost cause." There were letters from his 20s. "I tried to start my own business," one said. "It didn't go great. I failed fast, sat on the floor of an empty little office one night and thought, if my mom was here, she'd probably tell me this ain't the end. I didn't believe her, because I didn't believe in you. Now I wish I'd given you the same grace I give ghosts." Letters from his 30s. "Got promoted today," another letter read. "Boss shook my hand. Team clapped. I went home to an empty apartment and didn't celebrate. Who was I gonna call? The mother I thought didn't want me? The God I thought forgot about me?" Turns out they both got framed for something they didn't do. Lillian let out a broken laugh sob at that. He had the same crooked humor she did. She could hear Harold in some of those sentences too, that dry, sideways way of saying something heavy so it wouldn't crush the room. Then there was one of the last letters, the ink darker, written with a firmer hand but shakier lines. The date was from just months before he died. Pierce read this one too, voice steady but quieter, sensing the weight of it before the words even left his mouth. "If you're reading this," it began, "it probably means I didn't make it in time." Lillian's fingers dug into the fabric of her skirt. "My health hasn't been great," it went on. "Nothing dramatic, just little things adding up. The kind of little things doctors give you long looks about. I realized I've been waiting for the perfect moment to show up at your door. But life doesn't really hand out perfect moments, does it?" He paused, then continued. "So if this briefcase reached you without me, here's what I need you to know. I forgive you for not finding me. I hope you forgive me for not knocking." Lillian let out a quiet cry, covering her face. "I'm sorry for all the years we lost," the letter went on. "I'm sorry you held funerals in your heart for a baby that was walking around somewhere on this broken planet, angry and confused. But I am not sorry for one thing. I am not sorry you're my mother." She lowered her hands, tears tracking down her cheeks. "I didn't even know I was," she whispered. "I found your address," the letter continued. "I found your church. I know what street your house is on. I know you have a little garden out back with stubborn roses and collard greens." She gasped softly. So he'd really seen her, watched her talk to her plants, watched her pull weeds and talk to God at the same time. I know you wear that blue scarf on days when the weather's rough, he wrote. I know your walk is slower now, but still steady. You look tired, but you don't look empty. Her hand went to her scarf instinctively. She had the blue one on today. I wish I had more time to be your son in person, the letter said. To drive you to the doctor, to fix your porch steps, to help carry the groceries, to make you sit down while I wash the dishes. I wish I could hear your voice say my name just once. She choked, the sound raw. Thomas, she whispered. Thomas, Thomas baby. It came out like a prayer and a release at the same time. Since I might not get that, the letter went on, I did the next best thing I could think of. I took everything I built, the accounts, the little bit of property, the investments, and I put your name on them. Not because I think money fixes what was broken, but because I don't want you to spend your last years choosing between medicine and food, between light bill and heat, between dignity and survival. Lillian's breath hitched. Her tiny pension, the envelope she stretched every month. He knew. You deserved better than the hand you were dealt, he wrote. You deserved a son to help carry it. I can't go back and give you the years, but I can try to give you some rest. Pierce glanced at her, then at David. This next part, he said gently, ties into what I need to show you. He read the last lines. There's a small key in this briefcase, the letter said. Use it. It unlocks the life I wanted to share with you. Not just the money, not just the stuff, the truth, the memories. The proof that you were loved, even when you didn't know you had someone loving you. If you're crying right now, it continued, I'm sorry. If you're angry, I understand. But if somewhere under all that, you feel even a tiny spark of something that says, I am not alone, then me writing all this was worth it. The last line was simple. I love you, Mom. Thomas. Her shoulders shook. It was the first time in her life she'd seen those words written to her from a child. Not a card from the neighbor's kids. Not a church note. Her son. I am not alone, she whispered, what she was trying the words on to see if they fit. Then something clicked in her head. She looked up, wiping her cheeks. Mr. Pierce? She asked hoarsely. Yes, ma'am, he replied. You said there was papers. Legal things. Inheritance. She nodded at the folder he'd pulled earlier. What exactly did my baby do? Pierce let out a slow breath. He opened the manila folder and turned it so it faced her. Mrs. Carter, he said carefully, your son didn't just leave you a sentimental package. He left you everything. He slid several documents closer. These are the deeds to 3 properties, he said. 2 small rental homes he owned outright, and a modest duplex he was still paying on. This is the portfolio for his savings and investment accounts. And here, he tapped another stapled stack, is the trust he set up in your name. Lillian looked at the papers like they were written in another language. I don't understand these numbers, she said, shaking her head. I'm not used to seeing that many zeros in one place unless it's a phone number. David huffed a quiet laugh through his nose. Pierce smiled gently. In simple terms, he said, your son built a solid, carefully managed life over the years, and he arranged it so that upon his passing, every asset, every account, every piece of real estate, he met her eyes, would belong to you. She stared unblinking. To me? She repeated. Yes, ma'am, he said. You are the sole heir of his estate. No shared beneficiaries, no competing claims. Her hand flew to her chest. Why? She whispered, genuine confusion in her voice. Why would he give all that To a woman he never even met. David answered before Pierce could. 'Cause he knew you didn't even get the chance to try to be his mother, he said. He told me once, I don't care if she never changes a single part of her routine. If all she does is buy better groceries and fix her roof, it's enough. I just want her to finally feel like somebody showed up for her. Lillian's vision clouded again. Her mind tried to go practical. This must be a mistake. They'll come take it back. Some cousin will show up. But Pierce shook his head gently, as if he could hear the doubt she wasn't saying out loud. It's airtight, he said, legally and financially. We've been administering his estate according to his instructions. All that remained was you. He smiled softly. I'm glad we found you. Outside, someone in the hallway walked by, glanced in through the glass. The receptionist, now fully aware something big was happening, had stopped pretending not to look. Her eyes were wide, her earlier assumptions about the lost old lady clearly crumbling. The young couple in the waiting room exchanged a look, guilt creeping into their faces as they realized the woman they'd laughed about was sitting in there, having her entire life rewritten. Through the glass, they watched Mr. Pierce slide a pen and a simple confirmation form toward Lillian. You don't have to sign anything today, he told her. We can walk through this slowly. My office will help you navigate all of it. No pressure, no rush. She stared at the pen. Her hand hovered. Then she looked at the briefcase, at the letters, at the photo of her son as a boy, at the small metal key taped to that index card. Her fingers closed around the pen. I spent my whole life feeling like the world forgot me, she said softly. Like I was just here, in the corner, watching everybody else have families and legacies. She took a breath that shook. I ain't gonna throw away the one thing my child left me to say, Mama, you mattered. She signed where he pointed. Her signature looked older than the ones she'd written on job applications and red checks years ago, but it was steady. Pierce nodded, eyes warm. Congratulations, Mrs. Carter, he said gently. I know that may feel like a strange word in all this emotion, but your son did something powerful. He didn't just leave you money. He left you choice. Her brow furrowed. Choice? She echoed. Yes, he said. The choice to spend your remaining years differently than you expected. The choice to use this for yourself, or for others, or both. David leaned forward slightly. And he left you something else too, he said. She looked over at him. What's that? She asked. He nodded toward the briefcase. That key, he said. Everything you read about? The road he traveled to find you? It ain't all on paper. He nodded again at the tiny metal key. Your son set up a storage unit, David explained. Paid for it in advance. Told me, if she ever gets this far, she deserves to see what I saved for her with my own 2 hands. Lillian stared at the key like it was glowing. The life I wanted to share with you, she whispered, remembering the line in the letter. Her heart ached so bad it almost felt like breaking again. But under that ache, there was a strange, fierce warmth. A storm had hit her life, truth ripping through lies, grief tearing through years of numbness. But it hadn't just destroyed. It had revealed something too. She wasn't a forgotten old woman. She was a mother whose son had built a bridge back to her, even from beyond the glaive. And now, with a little key in her hand and tears still drying on her cheeks, she was about to walk across it. The key felt too small to be holding so much. Just a little scrap of metal, cold against the warm center of her palm. It sat on Lillian's hand like an ordinary thing. But she knew better now. Nothing about today was ordinary. Nothing. After the paperwork was signed, and a brief silence wrapped the room. David cleared his throat softly. "I can drive you," he said, "to the storage place, if you want to go today." She hesitated. Her whole body felt tired, not just old woman tired, but soul tired. Like somebody had taken her heart out, wrung it, and put it back in still dripping. "You sure it ain't too much for one day?" Mr. Pierce asked gently. "You've processed quite a lot already." Her eyes went from Pierce to the letters, then to the photo of that boy she never got to hold, looking at her with eyes that somehow felt like her own, staring back. "If there's something else my son left for me," she said quietly, "I don't want to wait one more day wondering about it. I already lost enough time." David nodded once. "Yes, ma'am," he said simply. "I'll pull the car around." The drive to the storage facility was quiet. Not awkward quiet, just full. Lillian sat in the front seat of David's old sedan, seatbelt snug across her, purse hugged close like it was still holding those letters, even though she'd left them at Pierce's office for safekeeping till she could bring them home proper. Outside, the city rolled past. Buildings, shops, kids on bikes, someone walking a dog in a sweater it clearly didn't ask for. She pressed the little key into her palm with her thumb, turning it over and over. "You okay back there?" David asked softly, catching himself a second later. "Sorry, habit. Usually I got folks sitting in the back." She smiled faintly. "I'm all right," she lied, then amended, "I'm here." He nodded like that was good enough. "That counts," he murmured. They pulled into a wide lot with rows of beige storage units, all identical doors lined up like soldiers. A sign announced the company name and climate controlled in big block letters. David parked and cut the engine. The silence that followed felt heavy. "You want to sit a minute?" he asked. "No rush." She took a breath, then shook her head. "If I sit too long, my knees and my fear gonna gang up on me," she said. "Let's move while I still got some courage." He huffed a soft laugh. "That's fair." He came around and opened her door, offering an arm she accepted without argument. They walked through the maze of units, his footsteps steady, hers a little slower, cane tapping against the concrete. Row C, Unit 27. He stopped in front of a metal door, blue numbers painted near the latch. "This is it," he said quietly. She stared at it. A regular storage unit in a regular row in a regular facility. And behind that door, a life her son had built without her and saved for her anyway. "You sure you want to do this today?" he asked one more time, giving her an out. She looked up at him, tears already building again. "I prayed my whole life for some sign my baby was okay," she whispered. "I ain't turning away from an answer now." He nodded once. "All right then," he said. He entered the PIN code at the keypad. The latch clicked, and he lifted the door. The metal rumbled upward. Inside, the light flicked on automatically, one lonely bulb illuminating a small, neat space. It wasn't full from floor to ceiling. It wasn't chaotic. It was intentional. Boxes lined one side, labeled in clear block handwriting. Childhood, journals, photos, MISC, mom. That last one hit her straight in the chest. She stepped forward slowly, like she was walking into a sacred place. Dust motes floated in the air, glowing in the light. On a small table near the back lay something folded carefully. She walked closer, heart loud in her ears. Her fingers reached out, touching fabric. It was a quilt. She picked it up, unfolding it with shaky hands. The colors were soft, blues, greens, little patterns of flowers and squares. It wasn't store-bought perfect. Some seams were crooked, some squares a tiny bit off. But in the bottom corner, embroidered with clumsy certainty in dark thread. For Mom, L.C. Her breath hitched. L.C., Lord, she whispered. Lord. David stepped closer, voice low. He started that when he found your full name, he said. Told me he didn't know if he'd ever get to hand it to you, but he wanted something real, not just money. To say, I thought about you. She traced the letters with her fingertips, feeling the bumps of the stitched thread. For Mom, she murmured. For Mom. She'd never heard that word directed at her in real life, but she was holding it now, sewn into fabric by hands she never got to guide. Her knees wobbled a little. She steadied herself, clutching the quilt to her chest like it might keep her from falling apart. She looked around. A medium-sized box in the corner caught her eye, one marked Gifts. She shuffled closer. Inside were wrapped packages, some in cheap, bright paper that had faded a little with time, some in plain brown paper with ribbon. Each had a small sticky note stuck on. For her birthday, for Christmas, for when I finally knock, in case she likes tea. Her hand flew to her mouth again. He bought things for me, she choked. David nodded. Every year once he found you, he said. Birthdays? Holidays? We used to tease him for keeping them in boxes instead of giving them to you. He'd say, I will, when I stop being scared of the door. Her shoulders shook. She picked up one small package. The note read, for when she's tired. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a pair of soft house slippers, simple, sturdy, her size. Boy, how you even know my feet? She whispered, half laughing through tears. David smiled a little. He had me guess, he admitted. Said she looks like someone who'd rather be comfortable than fancy. I told him that made you smarter than both of us. A sob broke free of her chest, and she pressed the slippers to her heart before setting them back gently, reverently. She moved to another box, this one labeled Diary Search. She opened the lid. Inside were spiral notebooks, all with years scrawled on the front. Her thin fingers opened one, the first entry. Saw her today. She walks slower now, carries her bag close to her like it might float away. Her lips trembled. Next entry. She laughed with the neighbor's little girl. I never had someone laugh like that with me. Did she laugh like that when I was born? Did I ever make her smile before they took me? She flipped, drove to her church, sat in the back, couldn't bring myself to go up after. Pastor called her Sister Carter and thanked her for all the time she helped in the kitchen. I didn't know you could be proud of someone you've never met. Her tears dropped right onto the pages. They soaked into his words, connecting theirs in a way ink alone couldn't. Entry after entry. Pastor house. Porch light was on. Wonder if she ever sits there feeling like she's missing something. I sat in the car feeling the same way. Bought her a scarf. Blue. Might be too bold. Kept it anyway. Maybe I'll give it to her the second time I meet her. First time might be too overwhelming for both of us. Doc says I need to take my health more seriously. Funny. I spent most of my life asking, why was I even born? Now that I want to stick around long enough to know my mother, my body's the one asking questions. She closed the diary slowly. Her hands were shaking harder now. She turned, and that's when she saw them. On the far wall of the unit, pinned in a neat mow, were photos. Not of landscapes, not of vacations, of her. One of her sitting on her front porch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes closed, mouth moving like she was praying quietly. One of her walking back from the bus stop, grocery cart behind her. One of her in her church dress, standing by her little rose bush. He'd circled one in red pen. Below it, in his handwriting, She looks tired here. I should have gone to her. Her knees gave out, slow, like a building crumbling. She sank to the concrete floor, the quilt slipping down around her like a soft-colored cloud. "Mrs. Carter!" David dropped beside her quickly, hands hovering like he wasn't sure if he should touch her without permission. She didn't faint, didn't pass out. She just broke. Right there in that little storage unit. The sob that came out of her was raw, from years stacked on top of years. Not just from today, not just from reading his letters, not just from seeing those pictures, from 50 years of talking to a baby in her prayers who'd actually been out there talking to her in his own way. She clutched the quilt again, pulling it tight against her chest, as if she were hugging him through it. "Why didn't you come to me, baby?" she cried, voice cracking. "Why you stay in that car? Why you leave me talking to a ghost when you was right there on my street?" Her words echoed off the metal walls, bounced back at her. David closed his eyes, face twisted in quiet pain. He was scared, he said softly, his voice shaking too. He was scared you'd slam the door, scared he'd see hate in your eyes. He wanted you too bad to risk here and you didn't want him. She shook her head violently, tears smearing down her cheeks. "I would have never," she gasped. "I would have never turned you away. I would have held your face in my hands and told you every day I missed you, even when I thought you wasn't here to miss." Her voice dropped to a broken whisper. "I sat up nights counting the years my baby would have been. He'd be 10 now. He'd be 20. He'd be 30. I did that till I ran out of numbers I had energy for. And all that time, you was out there doing the same thing from the other side of the story." Her shoulders shook. David reached out slowly, resting a hand on her shoulder. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't a fix. Just an anchor. "He didn't know that, Mrs. Carter," he said gently. "All he knew was the lies they fed him first, and by the time he knew the truth, he couldn't untangle the fear from the hope." She sniffed hard, tears still falling. It hurt in a way that didn't have a clean name. Not just grief, not just anger. A deep ache at the center of a stolen timeline. She rocked a little where she sat, quilt wrapped around her, whispering to the space in front of her like it was a crib. "I'm here," she murmured. "I was here, baby. I was always here. I would have made room for you in that little house if I had to sleep on the floor and let you have the bed. I would have fed you the good piece of chicken and took the wing. I woulda. Her voice dissolved, words breaking apart. David's eyes shone. He believed that by the end, he said quietly, every new thing he found just made him more sure you weren't what they said. That's why he kept coming back. That's why he built all this. That's why he left it for you. She tightened her grip on the quilt. "Then why God didn't give us one day," she whispered. "Just one day. One hug. One hi, mama. How you gon' bring us this close and still let him go?" The question wasn't really to David. He knew that. He bowed his head a moment, letting her say it, letting her rage, letting her ask the question every grieving person eventually throws at the ceiling. After a while, her sobs softened, still deep, still painful, but slower. Like waves that had crashed and were now pulling back. She sniffled, wiping her nose with the hem of her sleeve before realizing what she was doing and chuckling weakly. "Look at me," she muttered, half to herself. "Crying in some storage unit like I ain't got tissues in my purse." She reached for it, hands unsteady, and David moved quickly. "Let me get it," he said. He grabbed her bag, handed it to her, and she fished out a balled-up old tissue and laughed at herself again. "Shoulda bought stock in these," she muttered, wiping her eyes. David sat beside her on the cold concrete. They stayed like that for a minute. No one rushing her to stand up. No one telling her to calm down. just a woman and a man, sitting in the middle of a life someone else had pieced together for them. After a long moment, David spoke quietly. "He told me something the night he signed the last of his papers," he said. "We were sitting at his kitchen table. He had that briefcase right there, put his hand on it and said, 'If this is all she gets from me, at least she'll know I didn't quit on her.'" Lillian looked at him, eyes red and swollen. "He didn't," David said. "He didn't quit, Mrs. Carter. He didn't give up. Not on you. Not once he knew the truth." Her bottom lip trembled. For the first time, her tears weren't just grief. They were also a strange, aching gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. David frowned slightly. "For what?" he asked. "For staying with him," she said. "For helping him look. For not letting my baby carry all this by himself." His eyes softened. "I couldn't take away what happened," he said, "but I could keep him from going through the rest of it alone. I figure that's what we're all really for, anyway. Not to fix each other's past, just to make the road less lonely." She nodded, wiping her face again. Her gaze drifted around the unit. The quilt, the gifts, the diaries, the photos of her life, seen from a distance she never knew existed. For the first time in decades, the emptiness inside her wasn't total. Still broken, still sore, still missing what she never got. But no longer hollow, because now she knew she had been loved, named, saved for, not forgotten. From the grave, her son had reached back and put a hand on her shoulder, and as she sat on that cold floor, quilt wrapped around her like the hug she'd never gotten, with David beside her, as quiet witness, the loneliness she'd worn like a second skin her whole life finally started to crack. Grief didn't disappear. It just changed shape. Days after the storage unit, Lillian moved a little slower, but something in her eyes was clearer. Like someone had wiped fog from a window inside her. The briefcase came home with her. So did the quilt, the diaries, a few of the wrapped gifts from the gifts box. She couldn't bring herself to open all of them just yet. Some felt like they needed to stay wrapped, like promises waiting for the right moment. The money stuff? That took some time. Mr. Pierce and his team walked her through statements, accounts, deeds, patiently, kindly. They spoke plain English instead of lawyer talk once they saw how she squinted at the paperwork. "Think of this as different pockets," Pierce told her in one meeting, smiling. "You've got savings pockets, house pockets, giving pockets. Our job is to help you use them without letting anyone pickpocket you." She snorted at that. "Amen," she said. "World full of pickpockets with briefcases nowadays." She fixed her roof first. That was the very first thing. No fanfare, no celebration, just a quiet visit from a roofing crew who patched what needed patching, replaced what needed replacing, and left her house feeling less like it might fall into her lap during the next storm. Then she bought medicine without checking the price 3 times. Went to the good doctor instead of the cheap clinic that always ran behind and lost paperwork. Finally replaced the old fridge that sounded like it was growling at her in the middle of the night. But the more the dust settled, the more something restless stirred in her chest. She'd sit on her newly steady porch, quilt over her knees, staring at the world going by. Kids on scooters, delivery trucks, the mailman with his usual wave. She'd trace the stitched words with her fingers. For Mom. Her son had worked hard for what he left her. He'd tucked away pockets of provision so she wouldn't lack. But Lillian? She'd never been the type to just sit on blessings like they were trophies. Her whole life, she had given out of little. Now she had more than she ever expected. "What you want me to do with this?" she asked God one late night, sitting at the small kitchen table with numbers spread out in front of her. "'Cause you know me. I ain't built for yachts and fancy handbags." That ain't my lane. Her eyes drifted to one of Thomas's letters, spread open beside the bank statements. "If you use any of this to help somebody," he'd written in one, "I'll count that as us doing it together." Her gaze snagged on that line. "Help somebody," she murmured. "Us." That's when the idea began. Slow at first, like a seed in the dirt, then clearer, then urgent. It started with a building, not a cute house or a fancy office. An old, unused storefront 5 blocks from her church, the kind of place people walked past without really seeing anymore. Windows dusty, sign half broken, door taped shut with a faded for lease notice. She walked past it for years. She saw kids hanging around outside with nowhere to go after school. Saw moms waiting at bus stops with toddlers in the rain. Saw teenagers pacing, angry and bored, bouncing between bad options. The more she prayed, the more that building kept popping up in her mind. So one day, she stopped walking P. She stopped in front of it, and she said out loud, "This would have been a good place for my son to land when he was little." The next day, she took David with her and called the number on the for lease sign. The landlord, used to people wasting his time, sounded surprised when the quiet old lady in the cardigan turned out to have a lawyer on one call and funding on the other. Within months, the dusty space changed. Fresh paint on the walls, lights repaired, shelves built, tables brought in, chairs mismatched but sturdy. Her church chipped in volunteers. Mr. Pierce helped with paperwork. Some of the neighbors who heard what she was doing showed up to sweep and scrub. She named it Thomas House Community Center. When they hung the sign up front, she had to step away for a moment and dab her eyes with a tissue. "That name suits this block," David said, standing beside her. "Feels like it's always been there, even when it wasn't on the door." She smiled through tears. "Feels like he's finally standing on this street," she whispered. Inside, Thomas House became exactly what he would have needed growing up, a safe place. There was a corner with shelves of books, games, and puzzles, a room with tables for homework, tutoring, and coloring, an open space with mats where kids could sit in circles and talk. She used some of her inheritance to hire a few part-time staff, people from the neighborhood and church who had the heart but never had the funding. And then came the thing that made headlines on the small local news. She launched a scholarship program, not for straight-A kids only, for kids who had gaps, kids who'd bounced through the system, kids fostered, adopted, displaced, or left in the cracks. She called it the Second Chance Scholars Fund and wrote in the mission statement, "This is for every child who was told they were a problem instead of a person." Reporters asked why she chose that focus. In one interview, sitting in a folding chair at Thomas House with kids laughing in the background, she smiled into the microphone. "'Cause my son was that child," she said simply. "He had to fight a system built to lose him. I can't change what happened to him, but I can sure as heaven make it easier for the next one." The anchor blinked back tears right there on camera. The clip went a little viral in the city. People dropped off donations. Volunteers signed up. Some folks just stopped by to say, "I'm one of those kids too, thank you." Next, she started a support group. Thursday nights, in a circle of folding chairs. Nothing fancy, just styrofoam cups of coffee and a plate of cookies. On the sign out front, "Mothers of the Missing," for women who lost children to systems, circumstances, or lies. They came slowly at first. A woman whose baby was taken by child services and placed 3 states over. A mother whose son stopped calling after his father poisoned him again. A woman who'd been told her baby died at birth, and now hearing Lillian's story, wondered if her truth had been stolen too. They shared stories. They cried. They laughed, gallows humor. They prayed. Sometimes they just sat and breathed in the same space, knowing they weren't alone. Lillian didn't pretend to have all the answers. She just opened the circle, set out the chairs, and said, "You're seen here." Word got around. People started calling her things. Miss Lillian, Mother Lillian, Grandma Lillian. The last one caught her by surprise. The first time a little boy with big eyes and scuffed shoes ran into Thomas' house, grabbed her around the waist and said, "Grandma, look what I drew." She froze. "Grandma," she repeated, voice barely above a whisper. The word wrapped around her like the quilt at night. "Yeah," the kid said proudly, holding up a crooked crayon drawing. "You are center grandma. Everybody know that." She laughed then, a full, warm laugh that filled the room. "Well, I guess I better buy more candy then," she said, ruffling his hair. Later that night, sitting on her porch, she looked up at the sky. "You hear that, Harold?" she murmured. "I'm out here being somebody's grandma." The stars didn't answer, but something in her heart did. A few months into Thomas' house running steady, David showed up one Saturday afternoon with a look on his face she'd never seen before. He stood in the doorway of her office, a small room off the main space, decorated with mismatched frames of artwork kids insisted she hang up. She was sorting applications for the scholarship fund when he knocked lightly. "Come on in, Mr. Hale," she said. "You know this door stays open." He stepped in, but he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a young woman, maybe in her late 20s, skin the same shade as the boy in the photo, eyes that looked like a blend of fear and fierce determination. Hands gripping a baby carrier handle so tight her knuckles were pale. "Mrs. Carter," David said softly, "there's someone I want you to meet." The young woman swallowed, eyes wet. "Hi," she said, voice small. I'm sorry to just show up like this." Lillian's heart picked up speed. She stood slowly, one hand resting on the desk to steady herself. "And who might you be, baby?" she asked, gentle as ever. The young woman shifted the carrier slightly. "My name is Jasmine Hale," she said. I'm Thomas's daughter." The room tilted. For a moment, Lillian thought her knees might give out again like they did in the storage unit. His daughter," she whispered. Jasmine nodded, tears spilling now. "I didn't grow up with him," she said quickly. "My mom and him, it was complicated, but I knew who he was. We met when I was a teenager. He tried his best to be in my life after that." Lillian's hand flew to her mouth. Jasmine took a shaky breath. "Before he died," she said, "he told me about you, said he'd found you, at least on paper. Said he was scared to show up, but he was working on it. He told me, if anything happens to me before I get there, and she ever learns my name, go find her. Tell her she still has family." Her voice broke on the last word. Family. David stepped aside fully, letting the two women see each other without barrier. Jasmine wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "I've been following the news," she admitted. "Saw the story about the center, about you, about what happened to him. Took me a while to get the courage to come." She looked like Thomas in the eyes. Like some part of him had come walking into the room, dressed in her shape. "And who is this?" Lillian asked, voice trembling, nodding toward the carrier. Jasmine looked down, a soft smile breaking through the nerves. "This is Harper," she said. "My daughter, your Granddaughter. The word punched the air out of Lillian's chest. Grand, she whispered. Granddaughter. Her fingers dug into the desktop for a second. Then she took a breath, one that shook, one that healed. Bring her here, she said. Please. Jasmine walked forward slowly, like approaching something fragile and holy. She set the carrier gently on the chair beside the desk and lifted the baby out. Harper was round-faced, brown-skinned, wearing a onesie with tiny stars on it. Her hair curled softly at the top, and her eyes, big and curious, blinked up at the room. Lillian reached out, then pulled back, suddenly shy. Can I? She asked, voice breaking. Jasmine nodded immediately, tears falling freely now. Please, she said. He would have wanted this so much. Lillian held out her arms. They were old arms, thin, veined, trembly. But when that warm, wiggling little body was placed in them, they steadied, like they'd been built for this all along. Harper settled against her chest, fingers grabbing clumsily at the fabric of her cardig. Lillian closed her eyes. She rocked instinctively, slow, gentle, like she had all the time in the world. Hey there, she whispered, voice thick. Hey, my baby's baby. Tears slid down her cheeks, landing in the baby's soft curls. You don't know me yet, she murmured, but I've been waiting on you my whole life and didn't even know it. Harper made a little noise, not quite a laugh, not quite a cry, just life. Jasmine watched, hand over her own heart. David turned his head slightly, swallowing hard, eyes shining. Lillian kissed the top of Harper's head. You got a whole lot of love stored up for you, little one, she murmured. From a granddaddy you never met, and a daddy who fought hard in his own way, and a great-granddaddy named Harold, who's probably up in glory fussing about missing this moment, and from a God who stayed with us through all the mess. Her voice softened to a hush. And for me, she added, your grandma. I'm here now. I ain't going nowhere. Harper grabbed at the little cross on Lillian's necklace, fingers curious. Lillian laughed through tears. Look at that, she said. Already reaching for Jesus and jewelry. You gon' fit right in. Everyone in the room laughed, that kind of laugh that comes after a storm, when you're still wet, but the sun finally shows up. For the first time in a long, long time, Lillian didn't feel like a woman who'd been robbed of a family. She felt like the beginning of a new one. A center grandma, a scholarship starter, a circle leader, a mother who finally had arms full of the future after a lifetime of talking to the past. Evening sunlight lay across the porch like a warm blanket. Soft, golden, patient. The kind of light that doesn't rush you, doesn't push the day forward, just sits with you until you're ready to move. Lillian sat in her old rocking chair, the quilt folded across her lap. Harper slept against her chest in a tiny bundle, breathing, slow and steady. Every few seconds, the baby's little fingers twitched gently against the front of Lillian's cardigan. It had been months since she first stepped into that law office. Months since her life went from quiet loneliness to something she could hardly have dreamed. Her house no longer felt like a museum of silence. Kids from Thomas' house ran by sometimes. Jasmine visited with Harper on weekends. Mr. Pierce stopped by once a month with folders and updates. David came often, too often, for someone who claimed he wasn't good at sitting still. The world had crept back into her home in ways she didn't expect. But tonight, it was just her and Harper and the evening breeze. The briefcase, the one that started everything, sat on a small table beside her. Not locked away, not hidden, right where she could touch it if she needed to. Harper let out a tiny sigh in her sleep, and Lillian's heart clenched in a warm, familiar ache. You something special, she whispered. Rocky. You know that? You came here carrying pieces of people I thought I'd never see again. She looked out toward the street, where the sky was turning lavender behind the houses. Her voice drifted out softly into the air, half prayer, half reflection. I spent so many years thinking my life was winding down, she said. Thought I'd already lived all the big days. Funerals, anniversaries, quiet holidays at church. The rocking chair creaked softly beneath her. Didn't know God had one more beginning tucked up his sleeve for me, she said with a tired chuckle. Didn't know he was going to send me down a whole other road in my 70s. She looked down at Harper, brushing her thumb softly across the baby's tiny brow. You the proof, she murmured. Proof that time don't fix everything, but truth sure can. A breeze rustled the trees near the fence, carrying the sound of kids laughing down the block, the last ones heading home after Thomas' house closed for the day. Her heart swelled. Wealth can buy comfort, she said, thinking of Thomas, thinking of everything he left behind. But it sure can't buy peace. Peace come from showing up for people, from knowing you weren't meant to walk this world by yourself. Her eyes drifted to the briefcase. I thought inside that case was gonna be trouble, she admitted. Maybe a mistake. Maybe somebody else's mess. A sad smile tugged at her lips. But inside, it was my truth, my hurt, my healing, and the pieces of a love stolen from me long before I learned how to name it. The porch light flickered on automatically as the sun dipped lower. She inhaled deeply, the smell of jasmine bushes, of warm air just starting to cool, of Harper's baby shampoo. Some folks inherit money, she said softly. Some inherit land. Some get fancy names or trust funds. She looked down at Harper again. I inherited a second chance-ic family. The baby stirred as if responding. Not waking fully, just shifting into the warmth of her chest. ... Lillian smiled, brushing a softened curl from Harper's forehead. I ain't your mama, she whispered, but I'm gonna love you like one. And I ain't your daddy, but he's here in every bit of you. Her voice caught. Your grandma might be old, but she ain't done yet. Got a lot of story left, and you gonna grow up knowing where you come from. You hear me? Ain't nobody gonna steal the truth from you. The quiet settled again. Then a low laugh escaped her, gentle, surprised, grateful. I never thought I'd sit on this porch holding my son's baby, she said. Never thought I'd be loved by a child I never met, and love a child he never got the chance to hold. Her eyes glistened, but the tears didn't fall. These weren't tears of loss. These were tears of found things, tears of returned names and quiet miracles. The rocking slowed. Harper's breathing stayed even and warm against her. Somewhere, she imagined Thomas standing just past the porch steps, not as the boy in the photo, not as the man in the letters, but something in between, smiling a little, hands in his pockets, not angry, not afraid, not lost, just home. She didn't speak to him out loud, didn't need to. Her heart carried enough words for both of them. The street grew darker. A soft hum of nighttime cicadas rose. A neighbor's porch light flickered on. Lillian looked up at the sky, the first faint star appearing. Well, she whispered softly, voice warm as the breeze. Looks like this old heart of mine finally got what it's been waiting on. She placed a gentle kiss on Harper's forehead. Welcome to the family, baby, she said. Welcome to everything we almost lost, and everything we finally found. The rocking chair creaked once more, slow and steady. And the porch, wrapped in night and new beginnings, held them both. A grandmother and her granddaughter, two souls connected by one man, who spent his whole life trying to find his way home.